What's up, Bone Ponies? Tabletop Totality here with another podcast. We're talking about running a long campaign, the do's and don'ts in your tabletop RPG. Um, as always, you got me, Neil,
Jody.
Steven.
and I think we're just gonna jump right into this one, folks at home. So,
Dive right into it
yeah,
there, Neilster.
you're gonna
No
take your
prep.
Bone Pony and you're just gonna run it right into the meadow.
Yes. Yes.
Off the diving board,
Yeah.
right into the podcast.
Bone ponies actually can swim really well, in case you guys didn't know. For
Long
those at
dive,
home,
cannonball,
yeah,
your choice.
they're
Whatever.
pretty pro swimmers.
Jackknife. Any kind of diving really, right in there.
Can jackknife you?
Can jackknife. Hey, guy should be smashing an eye with Ken Jackknife. He'll come
That's
get
it.
you.
That's it. All right, so we're talking about how to go about, you're running a long campaign. At first, everything's going good. You're climbing through, level 1 through 5, no problem. Everything's keeping in order. 5 to 10, you're feeling it. 10 to 15, you're starting to feel the drag to finish it out. As 15 to 20, it gets very difficult. So we're going to talk about all those components, kind of how to keep the game alive when you're running such a long campaign. And in that, the real time days could be years. It varies for what everybody believes a long campaign is. I mean, I think for us three right now, the longest campaign we've ever been a part of is with each other. And it's been almost, what, 2.5, 3 years now? um,
Yeah,
Like
I think it's close to 3 years, honestly.
Yeah, for the people who've been a part of it since the beginning, Steve, I think it's closer to 2 years now for you, right? Because you were a year
yeah, I
after.
think a year and a half, maybe two. I'm not sure how long, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's hasn't been as long
but
as
for
yeah,
some people, that's ridiculously long.
yeah.
And we're gonna talk about some of our benefits that we found in that, and then even running past to a year campaign, I feel is like a normal long campaign. Um, so let's go right into it. I think the biggest aspect is your downtime. We've talked about this and a lot of other things, at least for my experience as a player in these campaigns. um if you don't have things moving off the ball, it's very, like, off of your tabletop sessions, I should say, is what I mean by the ball. um you can lose track pretty easily, where to keep that, that campaign running, you kind of got to focus on it more than just at the table. You're not going to be able to get sessions done all the time. We try and shoot once a month, and that's what adds to our longevity a lot of the time, because everybody's got a complex life.
Yeah, and we try to do that more so we were playing more frequently. There was
mm-hmm.
times when we just had a lot of availability, so we were able to play more. But as a way of keeping it alive, I thought as the overlord, the DM, that if we played at least once a month, that would keep it from ultimately dying off.
Just pittering
Because
out,
I
yeah.
think sometimes, like, even with a long running game, if you take a long break and there's no upkeep of communication or interest,
Mm-hmm.
then the game can unfortunately kind of fizzle out, and not really a fault of anybody or your own.
Yeah, if you're not
You know,
actively always in it or keeping some mindset on it, it's gonna hit a point where it's like, oh man, I don't even know what we were doing anymore. Why don't we just try and run a different campaign? Yada yada yada. Or hey, I'm really excited to run this. Why don't we just run this for one session? And then we'll come back to our long campaign, and then the next thing you know, you're never gonna come back to it.
yeah, and we talk about that more on we just had a episode about um I think it was like trying to keep it alive after a long break, how to take a
Mm-hmm.
long break.
Yeah.
We discussed some more of that. Um, One of the points I'd like to add about uh, the longer running campaigns and maintaining them, keeping that interest, I think, is a lot of the storyline, a lot of the world needs to stem from your players,
Hmm.
from the creations of the players and their characters and their stories and the things that they want out of the world. And that's all very important. And I think that games that are really going to run for a long time to hit that 20th level or go beyond that are ones where everybody feels that they are a very much a big part of that world and that game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
So I think that's we try to always say, like, the camera should always be on the players. Like,
Hmm.
Hmm.
it's fine to have details coming in from across the world or even showing a vision or a dream or something like that. But ultimately, nobody really wants to sit there and watch you read from the novel you should have written.
Yeah,
Yeah.
When they're at the table, they want to play their characters and they want to develop their characters. So the focus should be on them. And I
yeah,
think that that's a really big part of keeping it going. And I mean, I'm not trying to toot my horn or anything, but I've tried to, with everybody in my current game, to give them each like the limelight for a section of the story
Yeah.
yeah,
where it pertains directly to them, you know?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's just how I've always tried to do my campaigns or stories. So
Yeah, and I mean, like, to use a more known entity of that sort of thing in terms of long term campaigns. I This past week I just watched The Legend of Vox Machina, which is the Critical Role
Hmm.
animation, and the fantastic animated series, by the
it was
way.
very good.
But
Yeah, it was very good.
that whole that whole season revolves around a plot line related to one of the characters from the party, and his like whole it goes into his backstory and like him getting revenge on people who
It's
betrayed
all
his
essentially
family.
about Percy DeRollo.
Yeah, but yeah, and
Yeah.
in the first campaign of Critical Role, Matt Mercer did that with all of his character, every character that was playing, all his player characters, all each got a little thing that they got to do, where it was like they got to go, you know, yeah, the twins got to go do stuff with their dad. Grog got to fight against the dude that destroyed his family, and like all the different characters got like a couple of sessions, like 3 or 4 sessions at least. Percy's whole thing was like 10 sessions, but it's like if you really want to keep a campaign going, and you have characters with like a backstory that you can dig into, and you don't really know like where you can go, it's like, oh, this character's backstory could maybe be something that we could dive into and have some sessions in while I figure out the overarching storyline of the entire campaign. It'll
Well,
give me some time to
yeah.
do that,
Yeah. I think
and
also a
also level
good.
up the characters,
Sorry.
and
Continue.
give them more time to grow and give them some closure to their stories.
Well, I think the biggest aspect of that is not so much to give closure to stories or things like that, but you're now tying in
Hmm.
a
Yeah,
character story to your world.
yeah,
Anybody
Yes.
can create a world and create a problem and have a group of adventurers try and solve it. But if those group of adventurers don't somehow have personal interest,
hmm,
something that correlates to them directly, you're easily able to lose them, lose the player paying attention at the table. They're
yeah.
not going to be
Well,
as
it's
invested. You're not going to worry about these things going on because you have no reason to. Yeah, the world's going to end. Okay, but my character, short goals doesn't care. Maybe they're a thief or a rogue, they're just trying to get rich. They don't care what happens to the world. The world's going to destroy, they may have the mentality the world's going to destroy itself regardless, so why not, live a lap of luxury. But if you make it certain aspects that, tie into their family, maybe tie into somebody who betrayed them, well, now they're going to stick around. Now they're going to try and pay attention to things. Now they're going to want to solve this because it backs to benefiting their story. And I think in our group we do a good aspect. Cody, you do a great aspect of as the overlord, providing those tie-ins, but also us as players, we seek for those tie-ins. We're asking questions to push our plots along, if
Well,
we're
and that's
not. Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
that's kind of what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
just to tag on to what you're saying, is I think that's kind of what I mean is that, like, when your players feel invested in it
Mm-hmm.
and their characters are invested in it and they have that interest, like you're gonna have a lot easier of a time staying together and making this story and to whatever end that it
Yeah.
goes to.
Yeah.
And to even wrap it up, in a way, like we'll talk about that in a different time about wrapping up one of these long games. But I think that is just an overall good point of get your friends invested in your world. Like,
Mhm.
and that goes back to something that I say all the time about not fleshing everything out ahead of
Mm-hmm.
time, like
Yeah.
leaving blank spaces. Because when I talk to my friends and I ask them about their different characters or their pasts, I can ask a couple questions and then I already have blank spots where I can, trickle that stuff into.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes, a lot of the times, the plots write themselves because they're making the story with you. It
Yeah.
shouldn't just be your story. Like I have ideas of what's going on in my world, and I can affect all the things that they are not directly affecting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the focus of the story and what they're doing, it should be their choices and those things matter. And I
Yeah.
think that when you have a game like that, people are going to be more apt to stay with it and make time to play it.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Because if it wasn't fun, why would you do it?
Exactly. And I
Right?
think it's the aspect of a lot of people take their story writing from their world writing for tabletop RPGs. They take it from video games, books they've read, things of this nature, which it looks like to you consuming this information, oh, this is a stagnant story. No matter what happens, and this is going to be the end, and things of that nature. And that's very true for a long period of time until video games started changing their storytelling mechanics to go along with what the player does. Do that in your
Mhm.
tabletop RPG. It's a lot easier. And exactly like Cody's saying, you do that by not flushing out everything. Yeah, you have your antagonists, you have your big factions that are, helping to shape the story, but let your players really, all right, they go and do this and they make friends with this group. Well, that's going to change a certain aspect of the story down the way. Now those people may go and help them in a big battle. Now they may be able to call allies, where if they never did that, well, yeah, okay, maybe this battle still happens, but now they're not going to have all these allies. Now they have to try and solve it a different way. It's
Yeah.
it's the beauty of not locking yourself in to a set idea. Yeah, you have this maybe overarching just world destruction motif going on. That's fine, keep that. But how you're getting there, don't plan those steps. You know what I
Well,
mean?
and
Don't
that's
force
why
it to go
couldn't
that way. Why can't it go that way? Type of thing.
right. And I think that, you can have antagonists from a character's past or their life or whatever be a part of whatever is going on in your world or be
Yep.
a part of whatever plot line you've already come up with. So you have an evil necromancer that's raising an army of dead soldiers to fight for him to try to put an end to a war that's
Hmm.
taking place. Why can't somebody's estranged brother be a part of that?
Yeah.
And I think you can do it in a way that's not heavy-handed
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
not just like an obvious trope, you know?
Hmm.
Mhm.
Like, oh, it was my brother that I was separated at birth from, and he turned out to be my evil twin.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
you don't have to be so, I guess, predictable, but you can still tie everybody's story into your story because this is all collaborative role
Hmm.
play, and it's a game played with each other,
Yeah.
and everybody has different roles, but different roles.
Ah.
For every viewer we just lost there, I'd like to apologize on the behalf of Cody.
Yeah, my bad, guys.
For those who stayed along, we can make more of those jokes if you wish.
You like it?
But yeah, no, I think it's a great point. Like if you're not doing a collaborative story, you know, one shots, small campaigns, you don't need to tie in backstories. You know what I mean? You don't need to do a
Right.
lot of that legwork. But if you want
There's a
something
time
to
and place for that, right?
exactly, if you want
Yeah.
something to run long, and that could be maybe you're doing it over multiple generations. You know, you have a group of adventurers that are going through. Well, they you know they completed whatever quest they had there, but now you're time jumping, and 20 years later, maybe that now your group of adventurers is the pupils of your old adventures. You know what I mean? And you're doing a campaign that does that style of thing. Well, the only way that's going to work is if you're all invested in this story. Otherwise, you're going to have people drop out because they're not following the storyline. They don't think it's cool. I just want to kind of play this character. All right, okay, it happens. No matter anything you do, sometimes that's something you can't help. People's lives
Mhm.
change, things happen. But if you make little steps to make sure that everybody's kind of involved in the story making, player wise, character wise, it's gonna go a long way. It's gonna be like, oh
Yeah,
my
and
lord, look at this person, our overlord's putting in all this work, and it's awesome, and it involves my whole storyline, and now I can really delve into this because that wasn't flushed out and I left it open. You're both doing that. As a player, your backstory shouldn't be all set and done. Yep, I did this, slayed the dragon, and now I'm here. All right, there's nothing there. There's nothing there for the overlord to really work with. They really have to fish for it and settle through. Where if you leave stuff open, the overlord leaves stuff open. That's all gonna mingle, baby. That's all gonna mingle.
yeah, and one of the easiest things I could say is, start asking questions. Just
Oh yeah.
like, oh, hey, your character's like father, like, what's up? What's up with him? What's he
Mm-hmm.
doing?
Mhm.
Is he still kicking? Oh, okay. What
Mm-hmm.
what did he do for work or whatever? Was he an adventurer? Like just asking questions like that gives you so much material to use
Oh yeah.
later on.
For sure. Yeah.
And then, you know, take those things, then take the things that they're doing in the game as your game is unfolding, and you mix them together and you make a good goulash.
Oh,
Oh
I
yeah.
love goulash.
Oh,
Yeah.
goulash is
Sorry,
amazing.
folks. I just
And
Yeah.
thought about
and
goulash.
yeah, and to add on to what Neil was saying before,
Like, comment, subscribe for goulash.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
yeah, but to add on to what Neil was saying before about like your character's backstory working into the world, like it especially works like having it open is especially good if you're starting from level 1 and
Yes.
you're starting a campaign from 1 to wherever. If you're playing a level 1 character and your backstory is he's the greatest soldier ever, he's killed 10,000 men, he slayed a dragon, all of his problems are solved, and there's nothing that he really needs to accomplish anymore, you as the overlord can go, he's level 1, you maybe he's been in a couple of fights and he's won some battles,
Yeah.
but
Maybe he's killed it.
he's made
Yeah.
some enemies
Yeah.
throughout that. He hasn't killed an entire army by himself. He's not this great hero. He's just some soldier who's managed to make some enemies. That dragon that he killed, he didn't kill that dragon. Maybe he attacked that dragon,
And it
but that
flew
dragon
off.
then
Yeah.
no, that dragon came and burned his entire village down, and
Yeah.
now he wants revenge. There you go. There's something that can be a hook later for your
Yeah.
overlord to use as a potential plot point for extending the length of the campaign and giving your characters something to do
Yeah.
on the side while the main plot is like going on or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get that too, and I also think like it doesn't hurt for you to like even if you have an idea about something and you're like, oh, this would be cool for this character. It doesn't hurt for you to you don't have to outright ask about it, but you can maybe do a little questioning amongst your friends to be like, oh, like what does so and so think about this? What is so
Mm-hmm.
and so, how do they feel about that? And that's just further resources for you to mine later.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um,
I would say like the biggest aspect is when you're sitting at that table and you're setting up for a long campaign. Some campaigns you may not know will go as long as they are, and those are amazing because it just happens naturally. and it's
Ooh.
everybody's love for it that keeps it going. But if you're sitting down with the sole intent, you're the overlord and your players have the sole intent of doing, hey, we want to do like a 3-year long campaign, this and that, we want it really big, we want to do this, you're gonna have to help each other. You can't
Oh yeah,
rely single-handedly on an overlord to make a 3-year out of character 3-year long campaign enjoyable every single session. There's gonna need to be input from everybody. You're gonna have to make sure, you could, even when you're, in your session 0, everybody could be chipping in on the history of this thing. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You could all sit down
absolutely.
and say, all right, we're going to talk about this continent. What is happening on this continent? What type of factions do we have? This and that. Flush it out with all of your players. That's fine, because all that's doing is giving, you're making a brainstorm board,
Yeah,
and you're
Yeah.
making all of these conflicts that could possibly be going on, and then you
Yeah.
as the overlord get to choose, here's our big piece. I'm going to take this aspect that, and everybody might have ideas of it, but that you could just chalk it up to natural, everybody's everyday history. This is what everybody knows about this continent. You know what I mean? And you as the overlord get to delve in deeper. You get to pick the, oh, I like this. I think it could be a really cool plot point. Now I'm going to delve in deeper to this. Oh, we're going to use a little bit of that dashed in, and that's how you make that work. It's how you make that story process work for everybody at the
I
table.
definitely agree with you with what you're saying about like the player input of it too, because like you were great. Steve has been great. All of you guys were great about saying like, oh, what's this thing in your world, or what's the deal
Mm-hmm.
with this character from like 100 years ago?
Mhm.
And you guys investigated like what I had already come up with or what I was willing to share, and then you'd be like, oh well, I'm gonna have something tied in, like the one character, the very first villain you guys engaged with,
Mm-hmm.
Neil, your character had a grudge against him
Instant, yeah. There was an
is
instant
from
thing.
their
Yeah.
past.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it was very easy to for Neil and this guy to oppose each other, you know. But that Neil came to me with that idea.
Yeah.
It wasn't the other way around. So I definitely agree with the player input in a long running campaign and just in a campaign in general.
Yeah. Any campaign,
Like
it's gonna benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
right. Anything that's gonna last, getting a one shot is a one shot,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mhm.
if you're just playing really loose, sure. But if you're trying to like tell a story and develop things, yeah.
Well, and that's
And
where, like, we all understood when you were like, "Hey, I want to run this campaign. It's going to be a long running campaign. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of this." Everybody who was offered to play at this table knew what it was going in, and I think that led to like great things for us. Because yeah, I would say at first, like, I was maybe the first person to deeply tie in my story to your lore, like our first bit of lore, because I was like, I'm not sure what I want to do, so I'm just gonna, this is the chunk of history that Cody gave us, I'm gonna delve into this a little bit, and then I'm gonna pull my character straight from the top layer, you know what I mean? So it gave us a good starting point. And everybody else's stories, because it had time to marinate, it had time to fit in, and everybody else picked good spots, it became, all right, the beginning, revolved around easily a lot of my character, and my character got tied in. But now we're at this plot point, and this is what this person was talking about, so now they're tied in. And it's ever evolving. You know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
and that was amazing.
you guys are currently, even though you're pursuing your overall plot point, you're still also involved in the plot line of a character who is now deceased.
Correct.
You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think probably my final point I wanted to say is that um, I think it's important for the Overlord to check in with the players at a certain point
Hmm.
and say, what is it that you want this character to accomplish? What is it that you want to have happen? Because maybe the player has at least somewhat of an idea,
Yeah.
I want this character to be tempted by magical power,
Yep.
and I want to play with that idea of them dealing with absolute power, being corrupted by it.
Hmm.
Okay, I'll work with that. I'll work that into my campaign, and I think that that's important without destroying immersion. I think
Yeah.
it's something that you could have outside of the table and say, hey,
Yeah.
what are you trying to think of? What do you think this character should be doing? You
Hmm.
Oh
know,
yeah.
what are some of their goals? What do they want to do?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that's just going to increase involvement, and it's going to increase fun, and it's going to increase the time that you get to play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
That's
100%.
science.
That's yeah. It's just basic math, you know. Steve, do you got one last point?
I don't know. I mean, like everything's kind of been gone over. Like overall, it's just sort of I could just echo what everybody's been saying. Like if you want a
Hmm.
campaign to go on for a really long time, it's all about collaborating. It's all about
Hmm.
everybody working together to flesh out the world and it's the overlord. The overlord can make everything like can create stories based on each character in order to help continue the story along and give everybody a chance to shine. um, and having an idea of what you want your end game to be kind of is probably a good idea to have, but you should play
Yeah,
it
it's
like you were saying. You should play it loose
you
from
know your beginning, know your end, how you're
yeah,
going from point A to point B. That's the joint. That's
yeah,
everybody adding in. Do you know what I mean?
Even if you don't have your end figured out, like that's perfectly fine.
oh
Yeah.
yeah,
And even if the character is struggling to like get overly involved just because they don't have any like major connections to what's going on, like that's the time as the overlord when you start asking them questions, because I really think that it's it might not be a lack of interest, it just might be a lack of
They
thought
haven't
about the
well,
character.
yeah, they
yeah,
They
haven't hit
haven't
that
thought
point.
about it outside of the game,
Yep.
or they haven't put that effort
Hmm.
into it yet,
Yeah.
you
right,
know
right,
Yeah. And
exactly.
then I would
because I think
say
sometimes that's a translation between like, what's the character like, my sheet of paper,
hmm yeah.
or this construct,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And then I would think, especially for a long campaign, what you need to do this, and I think we're really good about it. And some people would be like, "Oh no, that's breaking immersion." It's no, it's keeping immersion, and that's going over the facts of what happened, the history of what your party has done. You know, you need to have everybody kind of sit down and go, "All right, we've had a long time. Let's recap from the beginning. Short notes." Aspect. All right, this is who we're dealing with. We know this person is this person is that. Oh wait, no, this person isn't that. Thanks for letting me remember this. I know my character already knew who this person was, but
or
I want to make
certain
sure
questions
exactly.
by asking questions, by just
Yeah.
being like, hey, so what happened with this temple to this god? What happened?
Yeah.
And then that just gets everybody starting to talk about, and then now everybody has the plot line back in their head.
Exactly. You're
You
back to knowing what your character should know, cuz here out of game it's been, 30 days since you played, but your character has maybe only rested for 5 hours if that. In game they
they
wouldn't
just
forget.
they just came out of combat and are
Yeah.
like walking down a hallway and
Yeah, they wouldn't forget where they are, and they wouldn't make a stupid decision because they thought they were somewhere else. So I think reliving what has happened and like remembering everything is what you
Mhm.
should do in that beginning half. After a long campaign's gonna have points where you forget a major plot point, and now it's pertinent. So
Yeah,
maybe you're the overlord, you're changing chapters, and this next chapter is going to be something that they dealt with maybe 2 chapters ago. Maybe it's time to, as you sit down to play this, hey guys, what do you remember about this person?
yeah,
What information do you have? Because now you're going to start generating that, and it's going to be easier for them to go in and now, oh, okay, this is where, oh my lord, Toby is now tied into this. How did Toby get tied in with this
oh man,
person?
no.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean. And you had information about Toby, and now things are gonna click further back, and that's gonna be like holy mackerel. You know
yeah,
what I mean. And I think those are the aspects that a long campaign gets really cool. You
yeah. And
know.
to add on to that, as ironic and hypocritical as it is, coming from me, if you're running a long campaign, make sure you take a lot of notes. Because
Yes.
you're gonna forget things, and having notes, as Neil can attest to, is very, very helpful.
I'll remember your calendar.
And
Yes,
I think
exactly.
I think like 100%. I said it before, but I think that level of inclusion with your players, like making sure that they feel that they're a part of everything, is
Mhm.
gonna make sure that they take more notes,
Oh,
that
100%.
Yeah,
they're more involved, they remember more because they're more interested.
absolutely.
Because I've sat at tables before where I felt like I never have the camera lens on me, you
So
know.
why should I even take notes,
Right, so it's like it doesn't matter what I do,
Yeah.
so
And like
you
and
know.
even for myself, I've had to make sure like I you know for a long amount of time I used to, no matter what, I'd write down everything. And this is even before like Runerick, the character that playing currently in this long campaign, that
Pay to
I'm
play,
I'm
not at my
paying I'm
table.
paying to play as Runerick, yeah. No. But like before I was playing as Runerick, I used to write down if there was an encounter that happened without my character, if there's anything that happened at that table, I would record what happened. And what was happening is I would catch myself like, knowing other things. You want to keep everybody included, focus on what your character knows. Because now, like, somebody else is going to be like, hey, Neil, did you write down that stuff that happened between me and that one demon the other time? And I would be like, was Runerick there? Was my character
Yeah.
there? I have no knowledge. I could, try and help you spark something up just off of my memory, but my notes are my character's notes. You know what I mean? If my character kept a journal and wrote down their stuff, that's what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that helps, when you get a big table of people and everybody's recording the right information. I think it helps marinate ideas. You know what I mean? You're really trying to solve it like you're the players. But that's a different aspect, not so much, helping with a long campaign and running it. But I
Well,
think
ponies, you know that when we're in the saddle,
we're
sometimes
right.
we're all over the trail, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
We go to where no man's gone before.
That's
We're out
it.
there in the frontier,
Yeah.
you know, chasing our destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes we leave the known realms.
Yeah, sometimes we leave the path, but sometimes that sometimes leading the path leads to a new path that we
That's
might
it.
explore another time.
Sometimes it's just a great big friggin' circle.
That's very true most of the time. If you don't know that tree, you're gonna hit it 3 times before you realize, hey, that's the tree.
Exactly.
But I think that's gonna wrap it up for us and talking about running a long campaign in your tabletop RPG. It's
Include your players.
yeah. The big factor is just everybody sit down and you can come in with, hey, this is what I have for this world, but let everybody involve themselves in creating history for it. It doesn't need to be, they don't get to create maybe a full on big plot point, but they get to add into it, spice the ideas up a little bit. And the next thing you know, you'll be playing a game for 3 years, enjoying pretty much every session of it, even when you can't play it when you want to. Because, you got a good amount of people in the group. But
Real
as
solution is just remove people from the group.
no, because it still
Less
doesn't help.
conflict in the schedule.
It
Only
doesn't.
I play.
No, it doesn't matter if you have 2 people or you have 7 people. You will still have conflicts in scheduling, and that is the curse of tabletop RPGs.
Yep. Absolutely.
If we
The
didn't
dice
have
gods can be cruel.
exactly. But make sure, check out our other podcasts, go to the stable below and check out all of our links to our drive-through RPG, our beautiful TeePublics to get some great merch. And follow us on our social medias. All that jazz.
Support us on Patreon.
Yeah, the
Follow
Patreon.
us.
You want a dungeon created by us? You want an adventure created by us? Go on over to our Patreon.
Yeah.
subscribe for 1 month on the dungeon tier. You know,
We're also going to be updating our Patreon here probably in the next month or so.
we're getting some
We're gonna-
overhauls done. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a little bit more time. We were focused a lot on Thistledown, and we still are. We're still working on
Oh,
Thistledown,
yeah, we are.
but we have a lot of irons in the fire right now, and
Mhm.
we're hoping that the Patreon will be a vehicle for us to kind of show some of the projects we're working on to the people that are helping support those projects.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yep. So as the sun now comes in on my face, I think we will say adieu. And
That's my son, Neil.
no, this is my son now. Oh.
I'm
Everybody's
very
touched
close in
by
darkness.
sun, but Steve.
Yes, I live in the shadows.
Thank you for everybody coming along, and leave some comments and likes down below, and let's have a good discussion about campaigns.
Yeah, get ranch, Bone Ponies.
Hey,
Damn. Talk about thefts.
unbelievable.
Adios, people.